So there I was, buying a boat, a used boat. That was my first mistake. So it was last summer. My wife and I had been out a few times on some friends' boats, and we thought to ourselves, it's time for us to own a boat too. So I started shopping the Craigslist ads and realizing that boats were going quicker than hotcakes. Um, so I was on top of it one time, and I found it was a 1994 Four Winds Cuddy cabin, 215 Sundowner Cuddy cabin. Always wanted a Cuddy cabin, so I'm like, okay, sure, that's what. So I call the guy up, says it's still available. He says, yeah, $500. I'll send you $500 to hold it. Cool, great. It was a 6 hour drive there and 6 hour drive back. So I said, I'll be there Friday. And so sure enough, me and my wife drove down. We bought it and everything seemed fine. It's an older boat. It's a 94. It's going to have a few things. It's fine. He fired it up in his parking lot with the little earmuffs and it ran. It's fine. Okay, great. Take it out the first weekend. We get all spit shined, they're the new boat owners. We thought we were pretty cool. So we were out there on the Delta. And I know we fired it up, drove across the lake, and I realized that the motor wasn't, it was hesitating. But I'm like, okay, maybe it's bad gas. He said it had been sitting a while. All right, fine, benefit of the doubt. Get out there to the Delta. And we hang out all day, and then one of our friends has to go in the afternoon. And so I said, okay, that's fine. I'll take you back to the boat ramp. So get in, her and I jump in, drive over, start going back over the boat ramp, and then the thing is just sluggish. Like we're doing like 5 miles an hour across the lake. I'm like, well, this isn't good. I look back in the engine compartment, it's water's filling the back of the boat. I'm like, oh Lord. So the guy had mentioned that it needed a new bilge pump. He didn't say the one that was in there wasn't working, so that was kind of fun. So anyway, I'm like, crap, I can't run it anymore. So I loaded up my truck and pull it out and ended up spending the rest of the day on my friend's boat, which wasn't ideal, but okay, whatever. Bilge pump, not a big deal. $25 part, great. Okay, take it out again. And I dinked around a little bit trying to get that fuel issue to work to where the motor would run and get up on plane. So take it out again just as a family. Thought I had it fixed. Nah, still wasn't quite fixed. So we're out there floating around and everything's fine. But man, yeah, that bilge pump's throwing a lot of water. And I'm like, oh, okay. But at least the bilge pump's working. So we're like, well, let's go back. Let's go somewhere else on the lake. So we fired up, move across the lake. And my wife says, something's smoking. So, well, that's weird. So I stopped, shut it down, open up the engine compartment, through the alternator belt. Great. So I'm like, well, I guess we're going to run back to shore on battery power. The party's over, folks. So go back, drag it back to the house, get in there, change all the belts. They were all crusted and dry. Alternator, water pump, raw water pump, and the other drive belt that was on there. And I thought to myself, it was so odd about the raw water pump, which is the device that sucks water out of the lake to keep the engine cool on a boat. It's almost, there was no grooves in the pulley, like it had not been running for a while. And I thought to myself, I'm sure it's just my imagination. I'm sure I'm just looking at that because, of course, the raw water pump would be working because then the motor would warp and overheat, and that would be terrible. I'm sure it's fine. Next time we go out, still couldn't get the planing issue and the motor to run right. Just wasn't getting enough fuel. Man, must be bad gas. So we ran it real low on fuel, and I pumped out. Next weekend, I pumped out as much fuel as I could. Just see how much water was in there. Just a bunch of water. No water. Not the problem. Okay. So later that weekend, I tear apart the fuel line. And I pull out a big old wad of garbage out of the fuel line. I'm like, that's got to be the problem. Master mechanic right here. This guy. Master. So then I take it out the next weekend. And we're out there. She's on plane and everyone's having a great time. Primo. So we go out back to Sandbar, have a nice little time. Bilge's still running. I'm like, that's odd. But, we'll get it fixed. It's just one of them things. We'll wait till winter. It's fine for now. Friend wanted to drive it. I said, sure. So we run the river and go upriver and runs it back out in the middle of the lake. On our way back at the end of the evening, runs it out of gas. Okay, fine. Gas obviously isn't a mechanical issue, just one of them things. I just didn't put enough gas in it because, it's $4.20 a gallon. Yeah, I was being a cheapskate. Anyway, got towed off the lake by some friends. They got some great pictures. So that was fun. So then, the next weekend, these friends that towed us off, they said, hey, you got to come out to this other lake with us. Just put around. Last run of the season. It's going to be great. Okay, sure. Back in the lake. Fired up. Put it in gear to move it off the dock. Dies. Odd. Fire it up again. Put it in gear. Dies. So I think to myself, well, maybe it's just cold. It was a colder day. Fire it up. Let it run for a minute. I'm going, man, that motor just sounds grindy and rough. Odd. So I shut it off. I go back there and I pull the dipstick. Peanut butter. Lake water had mixed with oil, and so there was no real oil in protecting the engine anymore because all the overheating had caused it to warp the head gaskets. And so now I was sucking more water into my cylinders than gas and oil. So that was fun. I had some choice words that day. And then I began to ponder back on the history of this said boat. When I bought it from the guy, he said he put an oil change, plugs, wires, and a few like bellows and some freeze plugs. And being excited to buy it, I didn't think much of those things. I thought, basic tune-up, old boat, no problem. And then it dawned on me between the major leak, throwing the belts, overheating, and the bad gas, I was swindled. He knew there was something wrong with that boat. I took it to a boat guy, and he said yeah, so he was replacing those bellows because that raw water pump that I had worried about was not working. It wasn't sucking water in the motor. So I was heating it up and burning it up the whole time. All summer long, we were making it worse. And yeah, he threw a tune-up at the problem, hoping to fix it because he didn't know what he was doing. And realized it wasn't working. And so he sold it to a schmuck like me. So, all winter long, past winter, it has been getting an entirely new engine, manifolds, bellows, U-joints. I could read you the invoice right now. Anyway, to the tune of $8,000, I basically have a new boat. So that's my story of boat ownership thus far. So yeah, next time you go out and buy a boat, don't be me. Look it over. Get advice from friends who know what the heck they're looking for, and like they say, boat just stands for bust out another $1,000. And there I was, $8,000 poorer.